All right, welcome to another deep dive. We're tackling something today you all specifically asked for, protein.
Definitely a popular one.
Yeah, you guys sent over some really interesting articles about it and how much we need, where to get it, and how it all affects our, our health and fitness goals. And I gotta say, I've been feeling, I don't know about you, but I've been feeling kind of bombarded lately by all the high protein marketing out there.
Yeah.
It's like every food is trying to jump on that bandwagon.
For sure. It's a hot topic, and it's easy to get confused with all the noise.
For sure. So let's cut through the hype, get to the good stuff. One thing that really jumped out at me from these articles was that most of us in the U.S. are actually eating way more protein than the World Health Organization recommends, like 20% more. So it kind of makes you wonder, are you getting more protein than you need?
It's a very common scenario. The WHO, they actually suggest aiming for about 0.8 grams of protein for every kilogram of body weight. So think of it like this. For most adults, that's roughly the amount you'd find in like a palm-sized piece of chicken or a cup of lentils.
Okay.
Surprisingly easy to hit with a balanced diet.
Okay, so maybe I don't need that extra large protein shake after all.
Right.
But the articles also mention that certain groups, like older adults and athletes, might need more protein than the average person.
Right.
So what's the reasoning there?
Well, for seniors, maintaining muscle mass becomes even more crucial as we age. It's tied to overall health, mobility. So increasing protein intake to somewhere between 1.2 and 2 grams per kilogram of body weight can really help them preserve strength and keep active.
Interesting. So it's not just about like vanity muscles, but about, staying healthy and independent as we get older.
Exactly.
And what about athletes?
Yeah.
I always assumed they needed mountains of protein to, fuel those workouts and build muscle.
While it's true that athletes break down more muscle tissue during training, the idea that they need to constantly be chugging protein shakes is a bit of a myth.
Really?
Yeah, in most cases, they can meet their needs simply by eating a bit more to match their higher energy output.
Okay. So it's more about overall calorie intake and just making sure protein is a consistent part of their diet.
Exactly.
Not necessarily going overboard.
Right.
Now, you mentioned building muscle, and I know that's a goal for a lot of people. One article really challenged my assumptions by, highlighting research that shows plant-based protein could be just as effective as animal protein for building muscle. I was pretty surprised by that.
Yeah, a lot of people are.
Hold on, seriously. I always thought you needed meat to get those gains. This kind of debunks that weedy vegetarian stereotype, doesn't it? So what's the science behind that? Are certain plant-based proteins better for building muscle than others?
It really comes down to amino acids, the building blocks of protein. There are 9 essential amino acids that our bodies can't make on their own. We need to get them from our diet.
Okay.
Some plant-based proteins, like quinoa and soy, are considered complete proteins because they contain all 9.
Okay.
Others, like lentils or beans, might be lower in litter too.
Gotcha.
But that doesn't mean they're not effective for building muscle.
So it's like a puzzle. You just need to combine the right plant-based foods to get all the essential amino acids you need.
Exactly. And there are tons of delicious combinations out there, like pairing lentils with rice or black beans with corn creates a complete protein profile. It's all about variety and smart pairings.
Okay, that's actually a relief to hear. I was getting a little worried about having to choke down those giant tubs of protein powder I see at the gym.
Right.
Speaking of which, the article also mentioned that while protein supplements can be convenient, they're often unnecessary for most people.
Yeah, and they can even contribute to consuming, extra calories, which might work against your goals depending on what you're trying to achieve.
Okay.
The focus should really be on getting protein from whole foods first and foremost.
So for most of us, it sounds like focusing on a balanced diet with a variety of protein sources is the key takeaway here.
Exactly.
If you're thinking about using protein supplements, it's worth taking a closer look at your diet and seeing if you can hit your protein targets through food alone.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that overdoing it on protein can have its downsides too.
Oh, that's right. The article mentioned some potential risks associated with a high protein diet. So what should we be aware of, and how does this tie back to what we've learned so far about the different types of protein?
One thing to watch out for is replacing other essential nutrients like carbohydrates with too much protein.
Okay.
This can create an imbalance in your macronutrients, which can affect energy levels and even athletic performance.
So even if you're, aiming for muscle growth, skimping on carbs to load up on protein might actually backfire.
Exactly. It's all about balance. Now, another important point the article raised was the link between animal protein and an increased risk of certain health issues.
It definitely did. That seems pretty significant. What's going on there? Is it the protein itself or something else in those foods?
That's a great question. It seems that a big part of it comes down to what often comes along with animal protein, particularly red meat. Things like saturated fat and cholesterol, which have been linked to heart disease. Plant-based proteins, on the other hand, tend to be naturally cholesterol-free and often come packed with fiber, vitamins, antioxidants.
So even if you're not ready to go full vegetarian, incorporating more plant-based protein into your diet seems like a smart move for your health.
Absolutely. It's all about diversification and finding what works best for you.
This has been so insightful already. I feel like I'm already rethinking my approach to protein. Before we move on, I wanted to touch on one last point from the article, getting all those essential amino acids we talked about. I mentioned something about pairing different plant-based foods to create what they call, quote, complete proteins. Can you give us a few examples of what that looks like in real life?
Of course. Think about classic combinations like beans and rice or lentil soup with whole wheat bread.
Okay.
Another example is hummus and pita bread. Separately, they might not have that full spectrum of essential amino acids, but together they create a powerhouse of protein.
It's like building your own protein power couple.
Yeah.
And there's something satisfying about knowing you can get all the nutrients you need from simple, delicious combinations like that.
Exactly. It's all about making informed choices and finding what fits your lifestyle and preferences.
We've been talking about the importance of a balanced approach to protein, and one thing that really stuck with me was the idea that focusing too much on protein could actually mean missing out on other important nutrients.
Yeah.
Especially carbohydrates.
Right.
And I know I'm guilty of cutting back on carbs sometimes when I'm trying to eat more protein.
It's a common misconception that carbs are the enemy, but they're actually our body's primary source of energy, especially for intense physical activity.
So someone like training for a marathon, for example, would need to make sure they're getting enough carbs alongside their protein.
Absolutely. And the article made a really interesting point about how skimping on carbs to make room for more protein could actually hinder athletic performance. If we're not fueling our bodies properly with carbs, we risk depleting those energy stores, which can lead to fatigue, slower recovery times, and even muscle breakdown.
Yeah.
Not exactly what you want when you're pushing your limits.
That's a great point. It's not just about hitting a certain protein target. It's about making sure all the pieces of the nutritional puzzle fit together.
Yeah.
Speaking of those pieces, earlier we talked about the potential risks of high animal protein intake, but there was also some intriguing information about plant protein being linked to a lower risk of death overall.
Right. Yes. That was a significant finding. While more research is always being done, the studies have consistently show this connection. Eating more plant protein seems to be associated with a longer, healthier life.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. What do you think explains this difference? Is it something inherent in the protein itself?
It's likely a combination of factors, but one key difference is what comes along with those animal proteins, especially red meat. We're talking saturated fat, cholesterol, which have been linked to an increased risk of heart disease. Plant-based proteins, on the other hand, tend to be naturally cholesterol-free and often lower in saturated fat. Plus, they come bundled with all sorts of other good stuff: fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants.
It's like getting a bonus package of health benefits along with your protein.
Exactly.
So even if you're not going full vegetarian or vegan, incorporating more plant-based protein into your diet seems like a smart move for your health.
Absolutely. And it's not just about health benefits either. The article also highlighted the environmental impact of our protein choices.
That's right. The sustainability aspect is becoming increasingly important as we think about the future of food.
And the research is pretty clear. Plant-based protein sources generally have a much lower environmental footprint compared to animal protein. It takes less land, water, and energy to produce plant-based proteins. So by choosing more beans, lentils, tofu, and other plant-based options, we're not just doing our bodies a favor, we're also being mindful of the planet.
That's a powerful reminder that our food choices have have ripple effects beyond our, beyond our own plates. Um, Now, I'm curious about what happens once we eat protein. How does our body actually use it? I know we've touched on amino acids, but I'm imagining a kind of microscopic construction crew going to work.
That's a great analogy. Think of it this way. When we eat protein, our digestive system breaks it down into those individual amino acids, those tiny building blocks. Then they get absorbed into our bloodstream and transported to different parts of the body where they're needed.
So it's like a delivery service for protein packages.
Right.
What happens once those packages arrive at their destination?
That's where the real magic happens. Those amino acids are used to build and repair tissues, produce enzymes and hormones, support our immune system, and carry out countless other essential functions.
It's amazing to think that something as simple as eating a lentil stew can set off this whole chain reaction of building and repair within our bodies.
It really is. And that's why getting enough protein is so important for overall health and well-being.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about protein supplements. We touched on this earlier, but the article also mentioned their rising popularity, particularly among athletes and fitness enthusiasts.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on protein supplements? Are they ever necessary, or are we better off, sticking to whole food sources?
As we discussed earlier, while protein supplements can be convenient for some individuals, they're often unnecessary for the average person who consumes a balanced diet.
Okay.
And in some cases, they can even have downsides.
Oh, that's right. What are some of the potential drawbacks to be aware of?
Well, firstly, many protein supplements are highly processed and can contain added sugars, artificial flavors, and other ingredients that might not be the best for your health.
Right.
It's really important to read labels carefully and choose wisely.
So buyer beware when navigating the world of protein supplements. It sounds like it's easy to get tricked by clever marketing and end up with a product that's not as healthy as it seems.
Exactly. And secondly, as we've discussed, overconsumption of protein, regardless of the source, can create an imbalance in our macronutrient intake.
Okay.
Potentially displacing other essential nutrients like carbohydrates and healthy fats. We need to think about the bigger picture.
It's all about finding that sweet spot and making sure we're not neglecting other vital nutrients in our quest for protein.
Precisely. And lastly, it's important to remember that protein supplements are just that, supplements.
Yeah.
They should never be used as a replacement for whole food sources of protein, which all are a wider range of nutrients and benefits.
So it sounds like protein supplements might have a place in certain situations, like for athletes with extremely high protein needs, or individuals who struggle to meet their protein requirements through diet alone.
Mm-hmm.
But for the majority of us, focusing on a balanced whole food diet that includes a variety of protein sources is the way to go.
I completely agree.
This deep dive into protein has been so insightful. We've debunked some common myths, uncovered surprising facts, and gained a deeper understanding of how protein impacts our overall health.
Yeah.
We've talked about getting enough protein, but we haven't really delved into what happens if we don't. What are some of the consequences of not getting enough protein?
That's a great question, and it's an important one to address. Protein deficiency, while less common in developed countries, can have serious health consequences.
Okay, that sounds serious. What are some of the signs and symptoms that someone might not be getting enough protein?
Well, one of the most noticeable signs is muscle loss and weakness. Since protein is essential for building and repairing tissues, a deficiency can lead to muscle wasting and decreased strength.
So if someone's, working out regularly but not seeing those muscle gains they expect, could that be a sign they need more protein?
It's certainly a possibility. Other signs of protein deficiency can include fatigue, low energy levels, slow wound healing, and a weakened immune system, making you more susceptible to infections.
Wow. So it really is a crucial nutrient for so many aspects of our health.
Absolutely. And in more severe cases, protein deficiency can lead to edema, which is swelling caused by fluid buildup in the body's tissues. This is often seen in the legs and feet.
That sounds really uncomfortable. Are there any specific groups of people who are more at risk of protein deficiency?
Yes, certain populations are more vulnerable. Older adults, for instance, might have decreased appetites or difficulty absorbing nutrients, which can increase their risk of protein deficiency.
That makes sense. And what about people following restrictive diets like vegans or vegetarians?
Right.
Are they more likely to be protein deficient?
While it's certainly possible to be protein deficient on a vegan or vegetarian diet, it's not necessarily the case. With careful planning and attention to consuming a variety of protein sources, individuals following these diets can absolutely meet their protein needs.
So it all comes back to balance and being mindful of what you're eating regardless of your dietary preferences.
Exactly. And it's always a good idea to consult with a healthcare professional or registered dietitian if you have concerns about your protein intake or any specific dietary needs.
That's great advice. Now I know we've talked a lot about the science of protein, but let's bring it back to practicality. What are some simple everyday strategies that people can use to make sure they're getting enough protein without overdoing it?
That's a great question. There are so many easy ways to incorporate protein into your daily routine. For starters, make sure you're including a protein source with every meal.
So not just focusing on protein at dinner, but spreading it throughout the day.
Exactly. Think about eggs for breakfast, Greek yogurt, or cottage cheese for snacks, and adding beans, lentils, or tofu to your salads and soups.
Those are great ideas. And what about for people who are trying to be more mindful of their budget? Protein can sometimes be expensive, especially animal-based sources.
Right.
Are there any affordable ways to up your protein intake?
Absolutely. Beans and lentils are some of the most affordable and versatile protein sources out there.
Okay.
They can be added to soups, stews, salads, or even used as a base for veggie burgers.
I love that. And they're so shelf stable, which is a bonus.
Exactly.
Any other tips for getting the most protein bang for your buck?
Eggs are another fantastic option.
Mhm.
They're relatively inexpensive and packed with protein. And don't forget about nuts and seeds. They're great sources of protein and healthy fats, and you can add them to trail mixes, yogurt parfaits, or even sprinkle them on top of salads.
Those are all great tips. And sounds like getting enough protein doesn't have to be, complicated or expensive.
It really doesn't. With a little planning and creativity, you can easily make protein a priority in your diet.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. We've covered so much ground already, from debunking myths to exploring the power of plant-based proteins.
Yeah.
And we've delved into the potential downsides of too much protein and the consequences of not getting enough. But before we wrap things up, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on something we haven't explicitly discussed yet. Personalized nutrition.
Hmm.
The idea that our individual protein needs might vary based on factors like our age, activity level, and health goals. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a fantastic point, and it's something we should all be mindful of. The general recommendations we've discussed are a great starting point, but they're not one size fits all.
Right.
Our individual protein needs can vary depending on a wide range of factors.
So someone who's highly active and training for a marathon might need more protein than someone who's more sedentary, even if they weigh the same.
Exactly. And as we discussed earlier, older adults might benefit from higher protein intake to help preserve muscle mass.
Right.
Individuals with certain health conditions might also have specific protein requirements.
It sounds like tuning into our bodies and paying attention to our individual needs is really important.
Absolutely. And that's where working with a healthcare professional or registered dietitian can be incredibly helpful. They can assess your individual needs, take into account your health history and goals, and help you create a personalized nutrition plan that's right for you.
So it's worth seeking professional guidance if you're feeling unsure about how to optimize your your protein intake.
Absolutely. And even if you're not working with a professional, there are still things you can do to personalize your approach. Start by paying attention to how your body responds to different amounts of protein. Do you feel more energized? Do you notice changes in your muscle recovery or appetite?
So it's about being a detective in your own body, paying attention to the clues and making adjustments as needed.
Precisely. And remember, it's not just about how much protein you're getting, but also when you're getting it.
Oh, that reminds me of something from the articles. It mentioned spreading your protein intake evenly throughout the day. Is that still a relevant tip?
Absolutely. Distributing your protein intake across meals and snacks helps ensure a steady supply of amino acids to your muscles, which can be especially beneficial if you're active or trying to build muscle.
So instead of, having a protein heavy dinner and skimping on protein at other meals, it's better to have a more balanced approach throughout the day.
Exactly. Think about incorporating protein-rich foods into your breakfast, your lunch, your snacks, and your dinner.
Okay, so let's say we're ready to make some changes and prioritize protein. What are some simple everyday strategies that people can use to up their protein intake without overhauling their entire diets?
One of the easiest things you can do is make sure you're including a protein source with every meal.
Okay.
This could be as simple as adding an egg to your breakfast, having Greek yogurt or cottage cheese for a snack, or tossing some beans or lentils into your salad at lunch.
Those are great ideas. And I know a lot of people struggle with finding, affordable protein options. Protein can sometimes be expensive, especially animal-based sources.
Right.
Are there any budget-friendly tips you can share?
Absolutely. Beans and lentils are some of the most affordable and versatile protein sources out there.
Okay.
You can buy them dried or canned, and they can be added to so many different dishes.
I love that. And they're so shelf stable, which is a bonus.
Exactly.
Any other tips for getting the most protein bang for your buck?
Eggs are another fantastic option. They're relatively inexpensive and packed with protein. And don't forget about nuts and seeds. They're a great source of protein and healthy fats, and you can add them to trail mixes, yogurt parfaits, or even sprinkle them on top of salads.
Those are all great tips. And it sounds like getting enough protein doesn't have to be, complicated or expensive.
It really doesn't. With a little planning and creativity, you can easily make protein a priority in your diet.
This deep dive has been such an engaging and informative deep dive into the world of protein.
Yeah.
We've learned so much about how much we actually need, the best sources to choose from, the impact protein has on our health and fitness, and even the environmental implications of our protein choices.
Right.
What are your final thoughts for our listeners as they navigate the world of protein and make choices that support their health and well-being?
I would say, first and foremost, remember that balance is key. Aim for a variety of protein sources. Prioritize whole foods over supplements whenever possible, and be mindful of your individual needs and goals. And don't be afraid to experiment.
I love that. Experimenting in the kitchen with different protein sources sounds like a fun and delicious way to explore this topic further.
Exactly. And remember, protein is just one piece of the puzzle. It's important to focus on overall dietary balance and a holistic approach to health and well-being.
This has been an incredible journey into the world of protein.
It's been a pleasure diving deep into this topic with you.
Wow. I'm still processing all this information we've uncovered about protein. It's amazing how much we kind of take it for granted until we really start digging into the science behind it.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those nutrients that plays a role in so many different bodily functions, from building muscle to supporting our immune system.
For sure. Now before we wrap up our deep dive, I wanted to kind of shift gears and talk about what this all means for you.
Mm-hmm.
we've covered a lot of general guidelines and potential risks, but everyone's different, right? How could we personalize our approach to protein to meet our unique needs and goals?
That's a fantastic question. It's important to remember that those general recommendations are just a starting point. There's no one size fits all approach when it comes to nutrition. Our individual protein needs can be influenced by a lot of things, from our age and activity level to our specific health goals.
So someone who's training for a marathon might need a different protein strategy than someone who's just starting out with a casual workout routine.
Exactly. And think about older adults who are trying to maintain muscle mass as they age. Their protein needs might be higher than someone younger who's focused on building muscle.
So it sounds like tuning into our bodies and paying attention to our individual needs is key. But how do we actually figure out what those needs are?
That's where working with a healthcare professional or a registered dietitian can be incredibly helpful. They can assess your individual situation, take into account your health history and goals, and help you, create a personalized nutrition plan that's right for you.
So it's worth seeking professional guidance if you're, feeling unsure about how to optimize your protein intake.
Absolutely. And even if you're, not working with professional, there are still things you can do to personalize your approach.
Okay.
Start by paying attention to how your body responds to different amounts of protein. Do you feel more energized? Do you notice changes in your muscle recovery or appetite?
So it's about being a detective in your own body, paying attention to the clues and making adjustments as needed.
Precisely. And remember, it's not just about, how much protein you're getting, but also when you're getting it.
That reminds me of something from the articles. It did mention spreading your protein intake evenly throughout the day. Is that still a relevant tip?
Absolutely. Distributing your protein intake across meals and snacks helps ensure a steady supply of amino acids to your muscles, which can be especially beneficial if you're active or trying to build muscle.
So instead of having a protein heavy dinner and skipping on protein at other meals, it's better to have a more balanced approach throughout the day.
Exactly. Think about incorporating protein-rich foods into your breakfast, your lunch, your snacks, and your dinner.
Okay, so let's say we're ready to make some changes and prioritize protein. What are some simple everyday strategies that people can use to up their protein intake without overhauling their entire diet?
One of the easiest things you can do is make sure you're including a protein source with every meal. This could be as simple as adding an egg to your breakfast, having Greek yogurt or cottage cheese for a snack, or tossing some beans or lentils into your salad at lunch.
Those are great ideas. And I know a lot of people struggle with finding, affordable protein options.
Right.
Protein can sometimes be expensive, especially animal-based sources.
Right.
Are there any budget-friendly tips you can share?
Absolutely. Beans and lentils are some of the most affordable and versatile protein sources out there. You can buy them dried or canned, and they can be added to so many different different dishes.
I love that, and they're so shelf stable, which is a bonus.
Exactly.
Any other tips for getting the most protein bang for your buck?
Eggs are another fantastic option.
Mm-hmm.
They're relatively inexpensive and packed with protein. And don't forget about nuts and seeds. They're a great source of protein and healthy fats, and you can add them to trail mixes, yogurt parfaits, or even sprinkle them on top of salads.
Those are all great tips. And it sounds like getting enough protein doesn't have to be, complicated or expensive.
It really doesn't. With a little planning and creativity, you can easily make protein a priority in your diet.
This deep dive has been such an eye-opening experience.
Yeah.
We've learned so much about the science of protein, you debunked some common myths and explored practical ways to optimize our intake. What are your final thoughts for our listeners as they navigate the world of protein and make choices that support their health and well-being?
I would say remember that protein is just one piece of the puzzle. It's important to focus on overall dietary balance and a holistic approach to health and well-being. Enjoy a variety of foods, listen to your body, and don't be afraid to experiment and find what works best for you.
That's fantastic advice. Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the world of protein.